we've actually continued to do this since then, is having contests off and on about who could do really cool things with AI. Let's go try to do this thing, or go try, everybody come up with something that's going to be more valuable, bring it to the team, and we'll give out gift cards to whoever wins. We actually did a complete conversion in the team in Cinch. In late February, we cut everything over, and maybe early March, we cut everything over to Claude, and we were using the desktop app, right? Once that came out, and you had Claude Cowork, you had Claude Code, all inside of one single app, and we did the same type thing. We basically told everybody, build something that is going to make you more effective in your job, and then come share it. And we actually voted on it as a team. Then we had a leadership vote on like what it would be, and we picked who won based on how efficient that make it.
I feel like that opening line for every one of them is, this changes everything.
Welcome, everybody. You'll notice it's a little bit different this time if you're watching, because there's 3 boxes instead of 2 boxes on the screen. So we've got a special guest today. And so, a lot of guests or a lot of executives, they're still using, AI as a chatbot. Justin's not doing that. He's building where AI has to answer a phone, use real data, write handoffs. It needs to make good decisions, and it needs to create real results. And that's just a very different point of view of a practitioner versus a user.
Yeah, and it really raises a question that, a lot of other people aren't asking right now, which is who maintains it? What happens when it doesn't work the way you think it's going to do, or you get a wrong output from AI? When can you trust the data? And then I think really critical nowadays, because people are leaning in heavy in some cases, when do you build, buy, or just, run a model internally yourself? I mean, all of those things they're ROI questions. They're near and dear to me as a CFO, because I want to make sure that I'm spending the money the right way.
Yeah. And so Justin Rae is the founder and CEO of Cinch. He's been working on the data gap between large companies and local businesses since long before like Gen AI was on the scene. So he's got long before. I mean, you're dating him. That's pretty rough, man. First guest right out of the gate. Look, man. Who's got one person on here is like all gray, and and so one of them is an old man. But Justin has been working for a long time on this, and I think you're going to be able to give us a really great perspective on how the world has shifted over these last several years, especially. So, Justin, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Yep.
Well, yeah. So why don't you give us a little bit, as you talk about Cinch, and, give us the short version of the path of maybe customer data to, reminder marketing to the Cinch that you're building today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. The biggest, most valuable thing, we've heard for years and years, data is the new oil, right? Those, 10, 15 years old type of mantra, but it really is still true, right? Is the fact that having good data and being able to manage that data in the right ways is becoming even more valuable than it was before, right? You're not just connecting that to a BI tool and being able to get some insights out of what's going to happen there, right? You're actually able to take action and work from that. And that's really one of the core things that we've done at Cinch is we've really focused on how do we ingest as much data as we can and then match that up to a single source, which in our case, we're focused on the customer. How do we know who the customer is? And then we know all these behaviors. We know what they're doing, how they're interacting with you. What is the relationship really like? And, one of the things that we really want to do with that is how does it turn into a virtual representation of the times when you could walk into a store and the store manager or the person in the store would know you, right? How do you turn that into that same type of experience in the virtual world, right? Or in these digital or the AI age, right?
Yeah, which is where most of this is happening now too. Face to face is not nearly as common as it used to be.
Yeah, we've got so many more people and so much more consumerism that we're trying to get out the door, and how do we interact with it a lot faster?
I guess for, as giving a little bit of, more background about, kind of, Cinch and the work that you're doing. I mean, you mentioned the oil, like this, the data is the oil, and that's where the value is. And how has that become more valuable as, we're using different types and forms of AI?
Yeah, I mean, just being able to access and make decisions relevant to the data that's happening. Right at Cinch, we have for years used machine learning. Since our initial launch, we included a lot of different machine learning about how a customer interacted with a business. And a couple of those ways, number one is like customer valuable. How valuable is this customer to the rest of to the business relative to the rest of the customers in that database, right? And so if that customer is moving up at the same trend, like most people's database, they're engaging, they're becoming more valuable to their customers. And so their customers become more valuable slowly at a linear path, right? If a customer is not moving up with the rest of the path, then they're actually becoming less valuable, right? This especially happens when, you've got pricing changes, or you just got, if you've got a customer over the, 10-year time period, right? Your pricing and what you offered 10 years ago is different than what it is today. Right. So that monetary value has moved up and to the right. If a specific customer didn't, and they stayed, maybe they're still spending the exact same amount, right? And you can't look at that and be like, oh yeah, they're still the same value. No, they're not the same value, because the rest of your customers have become more valuable. And so they become less valuable. And how do you look at that in a weighted way? That just the same way that an LLM applies weights to all the different words and processes that it's going in its decision making, we're adding weights and measures to each of the interactions that a customer has, right? And over time, how are those changing? How are they getting better or worse? And so we've been putting things like that into the process. We have things like pricing sensitivity, which tell us, hey, this customer is always using a discount, and it's the deepest discount, or they never use a coupon anywhere, right? Those are the types of things that become really valuable at helping to dive in deeper to using that data. Like I said, it's the more valuable oil now, because you can get more value out of it. And so you can dynamically change a coupon on an offering because we know this person's pricing sensitive, right? Maybe you even give them, they're high value customer. They've always been high value, but they're always pricing sensitive. So if you give them that discount, they'll probably come in more frequently, or you don't give them that discount, they come in less frequently, but still spend the same amount. And so those are the types of details you can really start to get into now at the granular level, and you can personalize that communication in ways that were really limited before, right? You still had to work in an aggregated level with most of your customer base.
Well, and it feels like that, right? The idea that we had to work in cohorts and we had to stratify and kind of build right? We would A/B test things and try to figure out a way to prove a hypothesis. And now it feels like you can micro test that and have a way better shot at getting it right, because you're seeing a lot more trend, like you're saying, at this really granular level. Like, I know Jim, I know I know he likes to cut a coupon.
CFO in him. You can't ever let it go.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, from what it sounds like to me, though, at least just what I know of Cinch, that A/B testing now, it is happening, but it's happening rapidly. It's happening like basically around the clock, just to try to figure out what the next insight is and the next unlock is to be able to sell the next widget.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. A really cool use case of this recently is just being able to customize tones of an email, right? And so you still kind of work in a certain level of cohorts, but you can identify, hey, what tone does Jim need? Jim needs the educational one, and Veer needs the urgency one, right? And so changing the content of that email, changing the subject line to get you open and engaged, right? Those are all done by A/B testing and a machine basically trying to say, okay, well, I'm going to shoot over, this one's going to be to Jim in a social proof tone, right? And so, from where we're going is we have about 10 different social proof, not social proofs, but we have about 10 different tones that we're trying to place customers into and identifying, okay, when you're trying to do this type of thing, you need this tone. But when you do this type of thing, you need this tone.
I mean, just kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about how granular you can get things. I mean, seems like eventually this will be Jim has a tone, Veer has a tone.
Yeah, I think there's still going to be certain cohorts, right? When you think about human consumer behavior, right? There are certain groups of people that tend to behave very similarly, right? And so you'll probably get down to that, but you'll have a whole lot more, right? Your cohorts will be many, many times more. But you'll still have certain groups of people that'll behave and interact very similarly as far as that goes. But I think some of the other things that are really changing that are really cool are that, you can have the subject line and general content that is similar for one customer, but then you can get, or you can have the tone is the same, but you have hyper personalization where, maybe you're taking, and this is again, bringing all that data together. You're taking information from a phone call that you had with the customer or a text conversation, and you're able to bring that in, right? Maybe you're selling shoes and you had a conversation with somebody, or they're chatting with a chatbot, and they say, yeah, I really love to run marathons, and I feel really lucky anytime I sell blue shoes, right? Or excuse me, I wear blue shoes. I'm gonna really do great, right? Those are my lucky color, right? Now I've got some extra blue shoes in their size that are coming out, right? I can dynamically send those over and be like, hey, here are your lucky blue shoes, go buy them, right? Those are the types of things that can become, you still have like cohorted tones, but now you have hyper personalization based on a lot of the data that's coming in and that you have on this customer profile.
Well, that's exciting. Like that, because from what you were saying, you have, hopefully at some level, you've got like 10, 15, whatever it ends up being that are statistically relevant tones, and but then you can mix them right down at this like micro segment level with like, but Veer likes blue shoes, and he likes when the 20% off sale happens, and that is powerful.
One of the things that I want to ask you about is, so you're doing all these really powerful things, but if you could possibly tell us, just give us a little glimpse into maybe what your stack looks like. Now, I know there's some secret sauce in there, so whatever you feel comfortable talking about, but what is, how do you, as a practitioner, go about implementing AI, not only into the product that's consumer facing, but also into your back office and just into the DNA of your company?
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot to that, right? And it's not one of those that happens overnight. We've been working with this stuff and trying it for a while, and going forward with that, right? We, as far as our software goes, we have a pretty typical software stack. We're using Postgres, using Snowflake, using React as general aspects of, and Python, and how the actual product works. But then we're able to connect in and bring in, things like Anthropic's API, and using the Claude in that scenario. We have Gemini, we have Codex, or we're able to work with OpenAI as well as with their aspects, and then we have local models. And so I think, it's really interesting because you have that's what happens product wise. But as you kind of highlighted, there's also the operations side of things, and how do we function and work with those. And one of the cool things I think we started doing in 2022, we actually were even telling our team, hey, AI is going to be the change here, right? I want my team to know how to use AI. And so we gave everybody the chance to use ChatGPT back then, telling them to try to come up with it. We had little contests, and we've actually continued to do this since then, is having contests off and on about who can do really cool things with AI. Like, let's go try to do this thing, or go try, everybody come up with something that's going to be more valuable, bring it to the team, and we'll give out gift cards to whoever wins, right? We actually did a complete conversion in the team, or in Cinch, in late February. We cut everything over, it was maybe early March, we cut everything over to Claude, and we were using the Claude desktop app, right? Once that came out, and you had Claude Cowork, you had Claude Code, all inside of one single app. And we did the same type thing. We basically told everybody, build something that is going to make you more effective in your job, and then come share it. And we actually voted on it as a team. Then we had a leadership vote on like what it would be. And we picked who won based on how efficient that make it, right? So these are the types of things that, while like the stack can be changing constantly because, you know, the world's changing so fast this way, right? But how do you culturally build the opportunities for people to be able to do that, right? And that's what we've really focused on as far as that goes. We haven't yet gone to the point where I'm willing to buy everybody a Spark box, the NVIDIA Spark, and put it on their desk. But I think that if we did get to the point where I knew that people were going to create the value from that, I wouldn't even be opposed to that, right? Is having that local model to be able to run through and just have something constantly monitoring where they don't have to worry about tokens. You know, it might not be a frontier model, but it's going to be able to do some of these things that, you know, 6 months ago, honestly, you couldn't do with a frontier model. You can do on a local box now.
You know, I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the wins that you saw. And then I'd also like to know where you've seen, maybe function by function, this whole use of AI spurring like creativity, efficiency. Where have you really seen that take off? And where have been some of the places where you're like, man, I really wish that function would have latched onto it a bit more? And, you know, because I can imagine in your mind, it's like, well, there's a priority stack. So you're paying closer attention to some functions than others.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think in that priority stack for sure has been engineering, right? We've heard just all about how you can build so much faster and plug things together. And so definitely the R&D teams, so our product and our engineering teams, being able to work out and get things going there. Did you have something, Beer?
No, I was going to say, like, as you're kind of talking about, like, I think, you know, part of it is, hey, you know, it sounds like folks are using it. You're getting it into the hands of end users, desktop workers, knowledge workers, engineers. And I think we all, I mean, like we've talked before, and we have wins. And I think an interesting way to maybe kind of like highlight is, it's like, what hasn't worked, right? Like what you know, like what you try, you're like, I wish it could, or, you know, cause I feel like that is where, you know, every, you know, trip and stumble, right, is like, oh, I learned something, and now I'm you know, I'm do this better the next time. And, you know, trying to let folks know that even those of us that are using it all the time, we still trip and stumble every once in a while too.
Yeah. I think you actually hit it perfectly on the head, how you said it, right? As we learn, we trip and stumble, and then we try something again, right? I mean, this is the, you know, the whole practice of everything, right? Test and repeat. And the aspect of how often are we giving context? What context are we giving to an AI? And then we're seeing what it does, and then we do it again, right? It's just a matter of iterations, right? And you know, we were talking before a little bit about how sometimes we feel like we're getting behind because everybody else is moving faster, right? But the truth is that's just us. Like, everybody's getting these at bats, and the more at bats you get, the more experience you have, the more conversations you have, the more you get to learn from somebody else's. And so you got to be having both of these. But what's really fun about it is that's exactly how the AI works, right? And so if you're learning and you're the kind of person who really likes to get the at bat, even if you're going to fail, and you're like, I know I'm fine. If I fail on this one, I'm just testing, I'm just seeing what I can do, but I want to see what I could get out of it, right? And you get the result or you don't get the result, but you got the same thing with the AI. And that's what becomes really cool is, and especially as we start to think about how do we replicate this, or how do we help teach people this, is how do we give it the context we need? How do we let it try something? How do we let it get the results of the trial that it had, and then go back to it, right? It's just a rinse and repeat process.
But so a question for that is, and I've actually written about this a bit, and would love your take. What holds people back from using AI?
I do think it's a little bit of like understanding what they can, imagination. I would probably say imagination is, you know, maybe even hope in a weird way, right? It's like, I hope this can do it for me, right? But on the same side, because AI can have all its wonderful hallucinations, you also gotta like be able to have wins. So maybe it's the fact like, could it do this for me, right? And I hope that it can, because I imagine it should be able to based on other things that I've done. I've seen it do this. And I think that maybe that's just, it goes back to iterations again. Like what do you do? Like what maybe holds people back is the general aspect of the other things that they've done or the way that they've used technology, right? It's like we kind of talked about at the beginning. It's not just a chatbot anymore, right? It's getting work done. It's building, it's orchestration of multiple agents that have specific tasks of their own, and those tasks get done and commingle with the other tasks of other agents, right? And that stuff just builds on top of each other. I think maybe you guys have heard of Hermes, but Hermes has their stages, their levels, right? And you can hit the different levels of Hermes and kind of grow into those. And I saw a really great YouTube video kind of explaining and walking through that. And I think that's the same thing for anybody. And if you can have a good experience at that base level, you can start to move up, right? And it's how do you get people to have that good first experience? And I think that maybe going back to the long way of answering your question, Jim, is what holds people back is they haven't had that first good experience yet that lands them in like the aspect of, I can imagine what this could do now over here. Like I imagine more they can do. There's a period of time where I feel like if people were using ChatGPT, they probably weren't having the best experiences of the people that were using Claude were, right? I think that's changed today, but I think late last year, that was definitely the case, right? Especially maybe even the first quarter of this year. And so you're just like, oh, I can do this. Like, but I think that's how it needs to work, right? You got to be able to know that you can execute something and believe it's going to be worth your time.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear from you. I don't want to interject too much, but I think my philosophy and yours is somewhat similar. Although I didn't have the nuance on the first experience, which I think is that's insightful. That's a takeaway that I'm going to steal from you. But my whole thing is I don't think it's fear. I don't really think that fear is holding everybody back. And I don't really think it's laziness. I don't think people are super lazy. I really don't. They're working hard all day long. Just to build on what you said, I think that having founders like you or business leaders or champions for this like you, allowing them the space to have the good first experience is what is holding a lot of people back. They can't get out of the hamster wheel of, I've got to get this report done. This is for knowledge work. But maybe engineering is the same too. You guys are better to speak to that. But in knowledge work, it's like, well, I have to get the cash forecast out. I have to get the financial model done. I don't have time to sit and re-engineer my entire process if the board needs this by tomorrow. That's my take on it. So I think you have actually this is one way to solve that issue, is just giving your people space to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been really great. You kind of asked about some of those wins that people had. And it was when we did that contest earlier this year, we saw some really cool things, right? We saw our customer success team was focused on like, hey, how do we support our customers better? How do I more efficiently manage my time to make sure that I have time to deliver really good value to the customers I'm trying to work with, right? Once you have people that were like building an agent that was going to, using co-work, go through all of their emails, go through the support tickets that came in, highlighting the customers that they've had, and highlighting, what are the issues that are going to have a bigger impact, and trying to prioritize those so that they can tackle those faster. We had on our sales team something very similar in the aspect of looking at the email. How do I follow up with the prospects faster? How do I answer the questions? And having an agent that's finding the answers for the sales rep. We had one where trying to do a demo in a way where you could mask all of the information that was on a page, right? And so you could basically, we have like a demo that's built out for the quick lube or oil change space, right? And he made it so it could mask it to display pest control, or it could display It just basically would change it to make it look like the data was somebody else's, right? But there was still an underlying thing on top of that. We had like analyzing the digital ads and how some of those function. So just all of our teams were coming up with the things that like we're trying to solve their problem, and it was really cool to see that people were doing that. And we'll probably be doing another one again here soon, just to see how things have changed. Specifically trying to get people to try agent orchestration, right? How do you take two agents and get one agent to do one thing and another agent to do another thing, and then them to interact, or an agent to work off of the two of them, right? And see what we can do with our team. So it's a lot of fun. It really is.
That is really, like, I think, like, to kind of tie, like, Jim kind of brought up the fact that, like, urgency, tyranny of the urgent, right, is maybe something that holds people back. And I don't want to, like lose the thread where, it feels like, kind of what you've shared with us already is, one, you've created space for your teams to be able, and you've created incentive, which I think should be a takeaway for folks who listen, right, is, by creating kind of contests, or, there is something tangible, right, to kind of work towards. I mean, that feels like it's not just one more straw being laid on my back of, just something else that, I have to do. Right. But this is something.
I hate to say it, but I think what you're describing is change management. And,
don't.
Yeah, I knew Veer would hate that. I mean, I know that's consultant speak, but that is what we're dancing around. Like, how do you change an organization's culture or DNA to orient around this?
Well, and it sounds like, Justin, and I'm going to make an assumption here, and I hope you can maybe validate it. I mean, you've created space, you've created incentive, and I'm going to make this assumption that you run your business with a clear set of metrics that people understand what is important. So as you said, they were working on projects that improved, but improved means, something that's really, like a hard number, right? I mean, like something that's measurable, demonstrable, that is not just it feels new, or it feels better, or feels faster, but it feels like maybe you're like, so the assumption is that your team, you've also created what the finish line, like what, like the North Star. Everybody knows where that star is.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like if you go back to that loop of AI, right? You got to know what the end result, what was the mission I set out to do, and how do I know when I hit success, right? What is my success criteria? What did I try? How did I end up with that? How can I try it better? Try it again, right? Just keep going around with it. And yeah, I think, kind of tying this back to some of the previous part of the conversation, but where, we did have a period of time where, one of our teams, everybody's just crunching at Cinch. We're just all trying to get everything done. There's a lot going on. We got a lot on everybody's plate. And we had one of our teams was just like, asking us to try this thing in AI feels like you've just put another thing on our plate right now. This to Jim's point, right? Now that team, they actually knew the value of AI. They knew what the AI could do already. This wasn't like we were jumping into something totally new. But what I didn't hear right at the moment from them was, it's like, look, we gave it that try, and we didn't get the results that we wanted, right? And so going back to that, like having a good first experience, they knew what AI could do. This was something we were trying to build and put together, and it wasn't helping them. About 5 months later, we totally changed up some things from product, and we were coming to that team. We were talking to them to try to see what we could do, and totally different experience, right? Now I think if you took that exact same thing away from them, they would be like, I don't even you want me to go back to working that hard? Like, you just gave me a tool that made it a lot easier, right? I often think about the differences in these tools. Like, we can all visualize the difference of a hammer and nails and a pneumatic nail gun, right? And how much faster you can just go through when you're putting a roofing project down or anything else, like nail, 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 right? As opposed to like, I got to hit this a million times with a hammer, right? Or in the automotive space, right? You got a pneumatic wrench and you're trying to put on lug nuts back onto a tire, right? Well, it's going to take me a lot of wrenching on that without that. but I get this pneumatic wrench and I can just zzz, zzz, right? And that's the way it is really with AI, right? Is now we're kind of getting these real power tools. It's not just like, hey, this was a thing that helped me with like as a knowledge worker to get things done, right? Excel has been the tool forever, right? Excel used to be one of my favorite tools. I use Claude way more than I use Excel now, but I used to have 50 Excel files open at any given time to help me manage everything and where it was going. And so I think, yeah, going back to like having that good first experience. How do you get somebody to have that experience that lets them know like, oh, I can have some trust, I can move forward with this, and it's going to actually be worth my time. It saves that change management fear, right? It gets them into, oh, I actually want to change because, you know, I can see that I can change, you know, 10 tires in the time it takes me to change 1 tire, or I can, you know, put in 50 nails in the time it takes me to put in 5. So you're showing that 10x experience in functioning and getting things done.